Barbarians, are you looking for a fun build that doesn't require earthquakes, maybe not even whirlwind? Well, we have an upheaval build for you today, and I'm super excited to get it out to you. The way that this is going to work, we're going to break down how the guide works. We're going to talk about the skills, the aspects, and then we'll talk a little bit about your boss powers, which I'm super excited to get into. With this guide, we're going to have a level 1 to 25. Then we're going to have a level 26 to 40, and then we're going to have a level 41 to 60. In each of those, the aspects will be exactly the same in the first two. You can find all of those aspects inside of a dungeon. You don't have to wait for anything to drop on the ground. Once we get into the final version of this, that's where we're going to have aspects that as you get further into your leveling process, if you happen to find them on the ground, you want to put those on because those are going to be the best choices for you. This guide has a lot to it. We have everything that you're going to need to know from when to temper, what to do at what level. Coming down into the bottom, we have a nice detailed gameplay loop, how to work your defenses, how to work your offenses. We're going to have a leveling walkthrough document, which if you come down here, this is going to take you right to this page right here on Cliptis.com. This is going to be a general leveling strategy for anybody. All of the leveling builds will be up on the top here if you're going to need some, but all you have to do is follow this. It's a nice little detailed guide to get you through your leveling process and figure out how you want to do it. You can also use a sheet document for you down here if that's going to make it a little bit better for you. But as we get into this, we're going to start with your skill tree. Now, if you've never used a guide before, you go into the skill tree here. You can open this up, which is the benefit of using this. You don't have to pause a video if you're watching this video. You can use the guide, which will be in the description of the video, so that you can maximize this and then save time. You come right up here to the top where the leveling path is. You're going to click on this. That's going to bring up a step-by-step of where to put your points as you level in. You follow along with this. If you're going to go through and put in all of your points here, and then you just follow this pathing, you're going to run out of skill points before you get all of the important skills out of the way. So make sure you follow the leveling path and then go back and get all of the ones that are important, but not as important as following this path. Now, as we're going to start up at the top here, we're going to be running Lunging Strike. This is going to be a Fury generator for us. We're also going to be running Combat Lunging Strike. Whenever we crit, now your critical strike chance at the very beginning is definitely very low, but there are some boss powers that are going to increase that. You're going to grant Berserking. Berserking is going to give you increased movement speed and increased damage. Once we come down here, we're going to be going into Upheaval. Now, we won't be maxing out Upheaval right away. That's going to come later on. We're going to put 1 point here first, and then we're going to fill it out. We're going to come all the way down through Furious Upheaval. This is going to be dealing direct damage to an enemy with a skill that is not Upheaval, will cause your next cast of Upheaval to deal damage. Now that's 20% increased damage up to 10 times. If we're just running through and we're using Lunging Strike, it's going to give us up to 200% increased damage as long as we've hit 10 times. Now, you don't have to wait 20 times. You can use Upheaval before that. But if your Lunging Strike is just killing the normal little monsters as you're running through the map, then you come across a big elite pack and you have this nice big buff up and ready. You line up your Upheaval, you cast it out, and then everything will die. We're also going to be running Ground Stomp. Now, this did take a little bit of a hit in terms of the damage. And by a little bit, I mean that Tactical Ground Stomp went from 900% increased damage all the way down to 100%, but this is also going to give us 4 seconds of vulnerable damage, so it is still super beneficial. We're also going to generate 60 Fury, and we're going to stun for 2 seconds. This is a really, really great ability to have during the leveling process. We're going to be taking Imposing Presence for 15% more life. We're going to be taking Martial Vigor for some more damage reduction. Rallying Cry is going to be a source of Unstoppable for us. Very important. It keeps you out of any crowd control effect whatsoever. No stuns, no freezes, no slows. All the way down through your Strategic Rallying Cry. 10% of your maximum life is going to be Fortify. While Rallying Cry is active, you gain 2% additional maximum life as Fortify each time that you take or deal damage. This is incredibly important because we're going to be gaining Barrier through one of our boss powers every time that you gain Fortify. Because we're going to be running Lunging Strike, we're going to take Belligerence. This is going to increase our damage after we use a Lunging Strike. So any basic skill, but this one is going to be specifically Lunging Strike, what's going to do extra damage. We're going to be going into Warcry. Then we're going to go all the way down through Power Warcry. If there's at least 6 enemies around, it increases the damage that Warcry gives us by 10%. We're going to be going into Booming Voice. This is going to increase the duration of your shouts. And then we're going to take Guttural Yell. Enemies that are affected by your shouts are going to deal less damage. 1 point into aggressive resistance, and then we're going to put 3 points into battle fervor. When a brawling skill damages at least one enemy, you're going to gain berserking. Now our brawling skill is going to be our ground stomp. We're going to put 3 points into pit fighter. This is going to be some damage reduction and damage to close. We're going to be doing slaying strikes. This is going to deal 15% increased damage to enemies that are healthy as well as injured. That means that any monster that is above 80% life, and then any monster that is below 35% life. We're going to be running No Mercy. This is 9% increased critical strike chance. 1 point into Thick Skin just so that we can unlock counteroffensive. Now that's going to give us increased damage when the Fortify is above more than 50% of our maximum life. Then we're going to be taking Defensive Stance. This is going to give us additional damage reduction when fortified. Now, Fortify normally gives you 15% damage reduction. This will give us 6% more for 21%. It's also going to heal us over time for a maximum life. Our choice for ultimate here is going to be Call of the Ancients. We're going to be maxing this out all the way down through Supreme Call of the Ancients. We're going to get additional power for the Ancients, and then we're going to deal 20% bonus attack speed and 30% increased damage. We're going to be taking heavy-handed here, while using a two-handed weapon, which is what we're going to be doing for Upheaval. We're going to deal increased critical strike damage. Then Brute Force, because Upheaval is eventually going to be guaranteeing an overpower, we're going to deal 24% increased overpower damage when we're using a two-handed weapon. And we're going to be doing Wallop. When using a bludgeoning weapon, you're going to deal 15% more damage to enemies that are stunned or vulnerable. We're going to be using a bludgeoning weapon, which is going to be your two-handed mace, so that we're taking advantage of all of these. And then finally, for your key passive, we're going to be using Unconstrained. Berserking's damage bonus is going to be increased to 60%. Normally, the Berserking bonus is only 25%, so this is going to go up to 60%. Well below 65% life, you're always going to be berserking, and you're going to gain 30% physical damage reduction. Now again, remember, make sure you follow along with the leveling path here. It's super important, and again, remember, up at the top here, you're going to click this turn on and turn off. It's going to make sure that you unlock all of the skills in the right order. Now that's the final board. If you look at the very first variant, we've only spent 38 points. Then the second one, we've spent a total of 52. And then in the final one, you're going to spend all your points. Now, as long as you have followed the leveling path, it doesn't really matter which variant you follow. This is also assuming that you have completed your renown. If you have not completed your renown, you're going to come right back over to cliptis.com here. You're going to go to the Diablo 4 how-to videos, and then you're going to go to the how-to videos right here. You're going to click on this one, Start This Now. This is going to be how to get your renown done efficiently and effectively. It's going to give you up to 12 additional skill points if you have the expansion pack. You could be missing out on a ton, so make sure you go out there and get that done right away. For your aspects, now when you come over here to your assigned skills, this is going to give you all of the aspects that we're going to be running. You can go right in here to gear stats, and you can see some of the stats that you're going to be running. For where to find your aspects, if you come down to the very bottom here below everything, we have your dungeon aspects. Every single one of the aspects inside of the first two variants can find in a dungeon. How that's going to work. When you're in game, if you pull open your Codex of Power, you go into the Codex of Power, your class is automatically going to be selected. Now for this video, I'm just going to uncheck my class because I found pretty much every aspect for the Barbarians. But if you go to the option to only find the aspects that are in the dungeons, that is going to allow you to just see the ones that you want. Now you obviously can use this search bar right up here if you need to, and you can search for specific ones. On the bottom here, it's going to show me that I haven't unlocked this dungeon. If you look right here, it says pin on map. We're going to click on this, and then when we bring up our map, it's going to automatically pin the dungeon that you need to go to in order to get that aspect unlocked. You don't have to scour Google. You don't have to go to every single dungeon and then mouse over it and see which item drops from those. You go right to your Codex of Power, and then you search, and then you click on the pin. It's super effective and super helpful. So let's go over and let's talk about your aspects. How this is going to work. We're going to start with Aspect of Might. Using your Lunging Strike is going to grant you 20% increased damage reduction. So we want to make sure that at least once every couple seconds, we're going to be using this Lunging Strike because that's going to be super important for survivability. Then we're going to be running Disobedience. Whenever we start to deal damage, we're going to gain additional armor. This will just help keep us alive because the more armor you have, up to 1,000 is going to be really what you want to get. Then we're going to be going into Expectant. Every single time that we cast a basic skill, it's going to increase the amount of damage that our next core skill does. That's going to go up to 30%. We use Lunging Strike a bunch of times, then we use Upheaval. It's going to get all of these increases as we slowly build more and more. Now, that's going to be in the gameplay loop as well, but we'll talk about that in just a little while. Then we're going to be running Numbing Wrath. Remember, we talked about having your Fortify converted into Barrier, and that's coming very soon, where we're going to get that from. But each point generated at maximum Fury. So once we fill up our Fury bar and we get maximum Fury, if we still use Lunging Strike, it's going to be generating Fury over that maximum. We're going to gain 4 to 5 for whatever that amount is. Ghostwalker here is going to grant us more movement speed and unhindered whenever we become unstoppable. We're going to become unstoppable whenever we use Rallying Cry. Unhindered means we can just run right through packs of monsters. It's really helpful when you're trying to get through a doorway and there's a bunch of monsters in the way, you just run right through. Then we're going to be running Aspect of Ancestral Echoes. This is just a fun one. Whenever an enemy is damaged with Leap, Upheaval, or Whirlwind, which we're going to be using Upheaval, it has a really high chance to summon the Ancients, and it's going to perform the same skill that you just used. So on that chance, if we get them to spawn, our Ancients are going to come out, and they're all going to use Upheaval. It's just a very fun way of adding in some more damage with an aspect that you can find in a dungeon. Then we're going to be going to Edge Masters. Because we're going to be using Lunging Strike, and we're going to be generating Fury, Edge Masters is going to make our abilities do more damage based on the amount of Fury that we have. As we use Lunging Strike, we do more and more damage because we have more Fury. Once we dip in Fury, we do less damage. When we get to our maximum amount of Fury, that's when the bonus is the highest. We're going to be running Berserk Ripping. What this is going to do, dealing direct damage while berserking. Now, we have to be berserking. And remember, if we crit with Lunging Strike, we're going to be berserking. You can get it from Warcry, and you can get it from Ground Stomp. There's a bunch of different ways that we can become berserking. While we're berserking, we're going to inflict up to 35% of our base damage as bleed. Now, the bleed is going to come in later on in the aspect, so that's why we're going to need to be generating some bleed here. We're going to be running Aspect of Inner Calm. What this is going to do, the longer that we stand still, the more damage that we're going to do, up to 3 seconds. So I know that most of the time we probably won't be standing still, we're going to be lunging striking. But as we build up all of our Fury and then all of our buffs for Upheaval, we're going to pull together a bunch of monsters, we're going to lunging strike, and then we're going to move out of the way of the monsters, stand still, and then cast Upheaval into the big group and just smash some monsters. So that's why we're going to be running this here. Then we're going to be running Aspect of Umbral. You restore primary resources whenever you crowd control an enemy. We're going to be running Slacking Aspect. This is why we're running our Bleed. Unlucky hit chance. You have up to a 65% chance to gain 20 Fury when a core skill deals direct damage to at least one bleeding enemy. We're also going to increase our maximum Fury with this. That is going to be Upheaval. So as long as Upheaval deals damage to a bleeding enemy, which we're going to get from Berserk Ripping, we have a chance to restore our primary resources, which is going to be our Fury, which will allow us to attack with Upheaval a lot more often. Finally, we're going to be running Vocalize Empowerment. While our shouts are active, we're going to be generating back some of our primary resources for the duration of that shout. For your class quest, we're going to be running the Two-Handed Axe. If you have played a Barbarian in previous seasons, you can actually log on the Eternal Realm and you can get credit for completing this, and you don't have to go do that quest again. Now, in that leveling guide and in the leveling video that's going to be linked on Cliptis.com, there's a whole bunch of benefits for going and doing your leveling quest again. So if you want to watch that, you can see what those benefits are, but you're going to just put on the Two-Handed Axe. You do not have to be wearing a Two-Handed Axe in order to get the advantage of this 10% increased damage to vulnerable enemies. All you have to do is equip this technique, and that gives you the bonus without having an axe equipped. It's very, very helpful and a great source of damage. Now, coming down, looking at your runes. We're only going to be running blue runes in this because it's a leveling build. Once we get into some of the endgame builds, then that will switch a little bit. But we're going to be running Kur, Te, or Sir, Se, however you want to pronounce it. The way this works is we're going to gain 300 offerings after we cast 5 skills. That has a 3-second cooldown. So inside of that 3 seconds, it's going to be important that we cast another 5 skills. Those 300 offerings that we generate every 3 seconds are going to summon 3 wolves. The wolves are only going to last for 8 seconds, but we can do this every 3 seconds. So eventually, we will have up to 9 wolves active at most times. That's a lot of wolves, and the benefit of having wolves, they do a lot of damage, especially early on in the game. They also grant vulnerable damage, and they stun and freeze enemies. It's a really great source of crowd control to give us back our resources. stun so that we can survive a lot longer, and then also going to be vulnerable damage so we can do more damage as well. For your other rune set, now because we're not going to be running earthquakes, we're not going to be running tech here, there is an option for you if you wanted to throw the tech rune in. It is absolutely going to be very, very strong in the leveling process. However, we're going to be running Mani every time that you cast 2 mobility skills, which Lunging Strike counts as a mobility skill. It's going to generate more critical strike chance from guard. Now, we've talked about a couple of instances where critical strike chance is super important. This is going to be a great source of that. For your gems. Now, we don't have the occult gems anymore, so we're going to go back to diamonds and skulls inside of the jewelry. Depending on what you need for your class, you can put in either diamonds or skulls. We're going to be running rubies only inside of your gear. When you're putting your runes in, it's super important that you make sure that the runes go inside of your armor. It's super important that when you're putting in your runes, they both go into your weapon slots. The reason is you're going to get a much more damage modifiers from having the rubies inside of your armor than if you were to put critical strike damage gems inside of your weapons. The main stat strength modifiers give you more damage than those additive numbers that you would put into your weapon. So make sure that that's where you're going to be placing all of your runes in both of your two-handed weapons. For the boss powers here, this is going to hands down be the strongest for leveling with the Barbarian. Sinrad's Flame, whenever you use a mobility skill, which is going to be Lunging Strike, it's going to put a ring of fire out that burns everything. It does quite a bit of damage. Even with the nerf, it's still going to be very, very strong. We're going to be running Blackmailer Sabotage. Now, what this is going to do is that this is going to give you back a percentage of your Fortify as barrier. While I was leveling on the PTR, I was fortified and I was barriered 100% of the time. It kept me alive. I don't think that I even came close to dying because of the amount of barrier that we got. Now, that was lessened a little bit, but it's still going to be incredibly strong, especially for the leveling process. Hatred's Embrace. This is going to give us critical strike chance based on our shadow resistance. And then Kurma's Spark. We're just going to reduce the evade cooldown we have based on our lightning resistance. And finally, we're going to be talking about the mercenaries. Now, there is going to be an endgame entry level build right here. It's just going to be in order to get yourself into the Torment tier and a place to start putting your aspects and start putting your Paragon points. There will be endgame guides coming out, so make sure you look out for those. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't miss out on those guides. There will be a much more in-depth video completely covering the endgame guide. This is going to be mostly focused on just the leveling. For your mercenaries here, we're going to be running Subo. Because we have so many sources of Fortify, we don't need to run Rahir. If you're feeling squishy, Rahir is a great choice for survivability. I love having the map hack out when I'm going to be playing with the Barbarian. We're going to be running Rahir as a more defensive ability. Now, if you want to, you can put Variana on here, but this is going to give you Bastion. Bastion is going to be an incredibly great source. It's going to take 90% of the damage that is dealt. So every 25 seconds, you get 90% damage reduction. You cannot beat that. Make sure that you take full advantage of the guide. This has a lot of the stuff that's in the leveling guide that's over on Cliptis.com as well. You're going to also run through some of the caps that you have right here, armor cap, resistance cap. We have their gameplay loop right down here, how your defenses work, how your offenses work. Make sure that you take full advantage of the guide that's going to be in the description of this video. And if you found this video very helpful or the guide very helpful, make sure you share both of them with your friends. Thank you everybody so much for watching. I'm live every night. I'd love it if you stopped by, said hi, theory crafted with me. Catch you on the clip side.